Well, welcome and thank you so much again for joining me today for this brief session. I'm delighted to be with you very virtually from London this sunny afternoon to share some perspective from Coursera on how skills development can really offer your organization a competitive edge in a very fast-changing world. So I want to take a moment here just to start and really acknowledge the seismic shift that we have collectively experienced over the last 15 months. Given the overarching impact of COVID, it's perhaps no surprise that the International Labour Organization has described this as a time of the greatest global crisis we've seen since World War II. And in fact, more than 80% of the workforce has been affected by full or partial workplace closures. And the overall impact of working hours lost between Q4 of 2019 and 2020 was actually the equivalent of 255 million full-time positions, 4 times the impact that we saw of the global economic crisis in 2008. Some workers, of course, were laid off, some dropped out of the labor market, and others experienced reduction in working hours. And the consequences, as so many things COVID related, were experienced very unevenly by geography, sector, job type, age, and even gender. And I'm afraid we're not out of the woods yet. Projections for this year continue to show an erosion in working hours, equating conservatively to another 90 million full-time positions. Yet, of course, despite this, our need to actually future-proof our skills within our organizations has only grown. Because as we see here, during that same time period, digital consumption of goods and services has skyrocketed, and businesses have accelerated their digital transformation plans, putting us all on a unique collision course as we experience those dual disruptions of COVID and digital acceleration. But of course, this disruption is not also without its inherent opportunities. And what you can see here is global jobs data from Microsoft that reveals how that global lockdown is in fact projected to accelerate the growth of digital skills job, with fully 149 million new digital jobs emerging in the next 5 years alone in areas like software development, data science, cloud computing, so many exciting terrains. And of course, over the same period, how we will work is being transformed at an increased pace by technology. And unsurprisingly, job creation will be driven by jobs focused on these capabilities across sectors and regions. Companies are increasingly realize these key tech and data skills, though, should not only be housed within the IT function, but instead really be housed across the breadth of the enterprise. And these challenges is that, of course, many current workers and those displaced by COVID don't actually possess the digital skills needed to fulfill these roles. And of course, we're also struggling to find the available talent supply to close the gap here as well. And this is why we're increasingly seeing CHROs, CEOs, and even global leaders discussing the skills crisis, the risk that it creates to our growth, and most importantly, how we can take action today. So as a little bit further context here, what can we be doing to prepare? Corporate learning programs, in my view, have been disrupted in a way that we will not be coming back from. And again, I personally think, perhaps controversially, this is a great thing. Why? Well, for too long, L&D has often been slow to drive change. For example, remaining very focused on legacy learning metrics like completion rates and hours of learning, metrics that don't actually quantify the real skills that we are building for the business, nor actually speak to the business outcomes that we are impacting. Critically, for the group of HR leaders here with me today, I also would say we have a huge opportunity because human capital is increasingly being recognized as a quantifiable and unique company asset. And I personally can envision a time in the not too distant future when we measure and report on skills within our business, just as we do today for environmental, social, and corporate government metrics as well. So as we think about our future workforce strategies, I think here we should follow 3 guiding principles. Firstly, it's important to state the vast majority of our workforce needed upskilling even prior to the pandemic. And despite this, most of the companies I speak with still lack true ownership and resourcing for upskilling at scale. And we need to build the business case with much more urgency so that we have the executive support required to accelerate this. Secondly, because so many job tasks right now are vulnerable to automation, much more widespread upskilling is needed to help workers continuously adapt to their changing job and business context. And thirdly, it's important to state we're only getting started here on the digital transformation journey, as we frankly can't even predict what the jobs of the future will look like. And this means we need to both foster a culture of continuous learning and curiosity, while also supporting employees in this journey by providing much more tailored and relevant learning pathways to truly move the dial here. I think it's fair to say if data is the new oil, skills are the new currency, and you can prepare your organization to excel in this reality by investing in upskilling across the enterprise for all segments, incoming, incumbent, and even outgoing talent as well. So let's dive into that a little bit further here. And you'll see on the following page an interesting point of reference, because what we see right now is that some of the most progressive CEOs globally are increasingly focused on skills transformation. And it's clear that organizations have a lot of good reasons to invest in their existing workforce and can really reap really unique rewards. So as you can see here, based on a recent survey of 1,500 CEOs globally, there's a widespread view that advanced upskilling programs are an effective tool for meeting many key business goals. For example, over half of CEOs cite upskilling as very effective and impactful in accelerating innovation and transformation. In addition to ensuring your teams have the most relevant skills, this really creates a culture where people are more receptive to new ideas and new ways of doing things. This is incredibly powerful for companies looking to stay innovative. By actively investing in existing employees, you also encourage them to stay longer and lower recruitment costs as well. Lack of access to development, we know from the data, is actually the main reason that people leave. And investment in transformational learning is impactful to the employee experience, engagement, and ultimately productivity as well. So building skills is not only imperative to our success for transformation, but also a real differentiator in the market. So with that context, I'd love to open up a poll here as well, and really just take a moment to understand how advanced your current agenda is briefly. So hopefully the poll is showing for you there, and please take a moment and respond for your business when it comes to upskilling and reskilling. Which of the following is most true? So A, we have concrete plans and budget put to this area. B, we are aligned on the importance of it in the early stage of planning. C, we in HR certainly believe in this, but we're working on hearts and budgets elsewhere. Or D, we just don't actually think it's that important for our business or sector. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a moment to weigh in on your thoughts there. It's a little bit challenging. I think that A and B seem to be the predominant view. It's a bit of an eye test for me on the screen, but good to hear we're in good company on that side as well. So let's talk a little bit more practically and how we can actually move this forward. But before we do, I want to leave you with one really interesting data point from our research here at Coursera. And what I think is so interesting to see here is a good indication of why CEOs are getting involved in this topic, because as you can see from our analysis, what we've seen is that industries with more skilled talent, especially in data and technology skills, are seeing higher stock returns and less disruption from COVID-19. So clearly the skills that we have and how we build that within our business is not just a topic for HR, but really a true indicator of our ability to survive and thrive into the future as well. So with that, let's talk a little bit further about how we can take this forward in my final few moments here. Given the importance of transformative learning, I think it's really important to focus on the graphic on the left. And this is actually from a book by Heather McGowan, one of my favorite Coursera professors, called The Adaptation Advantage. And you can see here that we've evolved from I to T-shaped employees already. ones who have subject matter depth in a core discipline and acquire breadth in complementary capabilities. And what she argues is that increasingly we need to become more X-shaped. And what this means is much more agility in skills acquisition so that we're really looking at those uniquely human skills that are going to be needed to work much more effectively alongside technology. And in fact, what's interesting on the right of the page is that our work at Coursera with the World Economic Forum shows that the majority of those future skills that are in demand in the coming few years are indeed metacognitive in nature. And that by gaining these skills in areas like problem solving, communication, and other key topics, we are going to be able to operate much more effectively in a world dominated by human-machine interaction. And so strengthening those skills in parallel to learning about new technology is going to be really critical to our skills development journey. So I'm curious, one additional poll for the group here. As we think about those core skills and what you are most concerned about right now, would love your thoughts to weigh in briefly here. So a few topics that you'll see on the page here, from business skills to technology and data skills, and of course those human skills as well. And if you would just take a moment, please, as many options as are relevant to your business, but as you think about what is most critical to build out, welcome the thoughts of the group as well. And so just to round out with a couple of points here, very, very briefly to give you a little bit of context and a Nordic perspective and an interesting range of skills that I can see very, very heavily, looks like all of the above for many people there. So as the results settle in, let me give you a view from the data that we have, because Coursera is quite unique. We work with over 82 million learners globally, which gives us a massive data set to look at the aggregate trends. And I'm not going to go into too much detail to close out in a moment here, but you can see some of the consistent trends that we're seeing. And again, what's interesting, business and technology, interesting, consistent themes, but we're also seeing a real desire for people not only to learn technology who work in technology, but who are moving into that through the reskilling agenda as well. And so in my final minute or so here, just to give you a preview, I know it's not a time to give you a lot of detail on Coursera. Feel free, of course, to connect with any of my team here today or myself over LinkedIn as well. I think that the key thing that I would say to you is, again, going to this point on measurable and actionable insights, the opportunity for us is really to understand from a data-driven perspective, where are we in skills right now in the business? How does that compare to sector peers? And again, how can we accelerate at scale the skills development journey within the business? And we're happy to speak further at future points and how we're progressing that with our other Nordic clients, folks like Nordea, H&M, Ericsson, and many, many others. But for my final point today, I'll just leave you very briefly, take a screenshot before we finish, if you would, a few kind of key questions that I would encourage you to reflect upon as well with your executive teams moving forward. So with that, I realize I am at time. I'm keeping myself to time, so happy to turn over from there.
Nicely timed there, Jenny. Really great. Well, my mind's blown because I've been talking about the T-shape for a long time now and a big believer in how we develop our own T-shape and the T-shape of our teams. But now it's all about the X-shape. This is really exciting. So I'm going to really tap into what's available out there to start to develop that. And thank you very much for opening my eyes to that. It's really great.